Hello and welcome to the Aleph Zero podcast. Today we'll be talking with Steven Novenstern, former head of strategy at Pangolin DEX, one of the largest DEXs on Avalanche, who happens to be building Kintsu, a liquid staking protocol on Aleph Zero. Hey, Steven, great to have you here.
Hey, Matt. Pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, I bet we have quite some stuff to talk through today. So, let's start. And, before we dive deeper into what is liquid staking, what does it bring to the table, maybe let's start with the basics and with the intro. So, what brought you to Web3 in general? And, how was it to build such a successful product?
I think I started getting into crypto around 2016. Originally, I started building an absurd amount of Ethereum mining computers and buying a very aggressive amount of graphics cards at the time, getting more and more involved. I did a stint at this awesome company led by the late Yuri Pros called Hypercube, where we made promo explainer videos for ICOs back in 2017. At the time, was also a full-time ad tech veteran, so I spent around 10 years in that space. And then 2 years ago, November of 2021, so just about 2 years ago, I joined Pangolin DEX as head of strategy, which was an incredible experience, a great ride, amazing team. We generated $16 billion in trading volume, went live across more than 4 chains. There was more than 3,200 active trading pairs. We built a lot of new novel smart contracts, went through a lot of audits. We did a lot of liquidity mining campaigns and partnerships and worked extremely closely with other DAOs to help them bootstrap their liquidity. And I learned so much in the process. And then started learning more and more about liquid staking. I just thought it was an incredible opportunity. And then very adjacently was looking at where I thought the next wave of growth was going to come in Web3. I was looking really carefully into zero-knowledge cryptography and how we could have privacy in our transactions moving forward. And that's really when I stumbled upon Aleph Zero.
Yeah, and so the privacy aspect of Aleph Zero was what brought you here, basically, right?
Yeah, when you pay your friend for pizza, you shouldn't have every single one of your past transactions kind of exposed to the people you interact with. And I think it's going to be important that we have that same level of privacy as we move into the next phase of Web3.
Was there anything specific to that as well? Because, there are plenty of privacy projects out there. So, why Aleph Zero actually?
Yeah, there's a lot of really incredible stuff out there. Aleph Zero really stood out to me because in addition to pushing the forefront of zero-knowledge cryptography and secure MPC, multi-party computation, the chain is extremely performant. We have single-second finality from Aleph BFT. The team building it is just really something else. And there's a focus on compliance and really growing the ecosystem that's, in my opinion, done excellently.
So also maybe going back to your Pangolin days, it definitely caught a lot of attention back then. And what do you think made it, so successful? Was it just purely development, or were you following some, clever strategies to do that?
One of the things that I think was really great about Pangolin is it was deeply intertwined in the ecosystem that it lives in. And it really had a great team of people that were helping other protocols. And that's something that is deep in the Kintsu DNA as well. The thing about DeFi is it's all about working together with other protocols and building an extremely strong community. Without the partnerships with other protocols, what are we really doing? Like as a DEX, you live and breathe on new trading pairs, volume, people that are excited about the assets listed on the DEX. And we had some of the greatest friends in the ecosystem constantly bringing us and suggesting Pangolin for the amount of support we could bring to them. It's very funny now, like with Kintsu and liquid staking, which we'll surely start talking about a little bit more. We have some of the same strategies by helping partners with liquidity mining, and it's just kind of from a slightly different perch. but it's extremely complementary.
Yeah, so would you say it's something like a rising tide lifts all the boat?
Yeah, yeah, that's the saying, right? Like rising tide lifts all ships. You have to work together, and I think as we make a more and more liquid ecosystem, it's just going to benefit everyone. So it's this educational thing where you want to make sure people are making the right decisions.
Yeah, so I think this is also what we'll cover today. We can actually jump into answering the most basic question here, which is what exactly is Kinsu and what it does?
Kinsu at the core is a next generation liquid staking protocol. What does that really mean? I'll break it down. So liquid staking is one of the most important DeFi primitives up there with exchange and lending. I would actually classify liquid staking as a very specialized form of lending, actually. But that's a story for maybe later. Really, there's this kind of layer of the blockchain where consensus happens. Staking is a nice marketing term, but really what you're doing when you're staking or mining is you're securing a network and you're processing transactions, and you get paid to do it. You earn rewards, and that helps incentivize people to be validators. But the rewards that they accrue, you have to lock all of your tokens. You're immobilizing your assets. Liquid staking, alternatively, what it really does is it unifies the network. It integrates smart contracts and staking rewards into the same plane, where before consensus rewards were kind of at the core of the network and not directly exposed to the smart contracts layer where all of the use cases are built. So what Kinsu does is we really pull those staking rewards into a composable token that can easily be integrated into other smart contracts. I really think of liquid staking like a DeFi middleware that creates a composable yield token.
All right. So, how does Kinsu work actually? I know you have to have a specialized validator to run it, but what else? What's, maybe starting with the tech, but also ending as what it means for the user? How can he use Kinsu once it's live?
So we can double click on the tech. I'll first start with the easy part and how you use it. The explanation is actually too simple. All you do is stake your A0. So when you stake your A0, you'll now receive SA0. So you can take your SA0 and use it in other protocols. We'll talk, I'm sure, about partnerships, but we're leaning in extremely heavily with all of the DeFi, GameFi, NFT community projects that are kind of growing up in the Aleph Zero and the broader Polkadot ecosystem. So you get this SA0 token, which really represents a tokenized share of a large staking pool, growing staking pool. What actually happens under the hood is probably the key thing you're wanting to get at here. I think what everyone wants to understand. So really at the end of the day, there's a vault, and the vault delegates to validators. And something that's really unique about Kinsu is that array of validators is going to be governed on chain, fully owned by the community, which we can come back to. But we're doing something that's extremely novel. Like you mentioned, there's a sort of upgrade to the mainnet where nodes will have the ability to use. It's basically allowing smart contracts to talk directly to validators, to the nodes. And using the runtime calls, we're going to speak straight from the smart contracts to the pallet nomination pools to bond and unbond tokens in a fully non-custodial fashion. This empowers us to facilitate the entire liquid staking process without ever taking custody of the A0 or DOT as we make more and more liquid staking protocols. The key thing here is that because it's fully decentralized, we are able to make these decisions about what validators actually are doing the like work underlying the Kinsu protocol in a very DAO way. So we're working really closely with Syncro, which is just an incredible team. The guys are next level. It's like a privacy preserving governance system, and we're going to be basically building our DAO on this framework. It's such a great team. We're so fortunate to be able to build alongside these guys. But before I go full fanboy mode, let me stay on track. So the privacy preserving voting, like you kind of can like vote in privacy, which is just kind of what you'd expect from voting, but not really what you have in like the first iteration of building DAOs. But now we have it. So like what we're going to do is we're going to have quarterly votes for who the validators are. When you think about these liquid staking things, it does just make sense. There's great product market fit for liquid staking already, which you can see when you look at Ethereum and other really great ecosystems. But they've become, again, such an important part of the space. How do you keep the network decentralized? You don't want to have just a small set of operators running validators that the liquid staking protocol kind of just locks in. It can be dangerous for the decentralization of the network as a whole that the liquid staking protocol serves. So we're actually going to have quarterly votes as if it was like voting for a public official or a set of public officials, like a cabinet, on a regular basis. So with the token, you'll actually be able to vote and like split up your voting power. There's some cool like voting theory that goes into this with like weighted votes, but you'll be able to actually select what the validators are every quarter and really have a true say in that process.
And would it be open for any validator to sign up for this? What should they do?
Yeah, we're going to have to scale this one. There's a balancing act here where we have to run a nomination pool for each validator. And we've put out some cool explainer videos that we can start to link to if you want visuals on this. But we're going to start with something in the ballpark of like 5 to 6 validators and seek to grow it exponentially over time. And as that grows and grows, we'll go from having a trusted set of extremely well-known and reputable teams, soon to be revealed, kind of that are the first quarters validators, and they'll likely stay on as we continue to grow that validator set and the percentage that is kind of delegated to each of them.
So I hear that the validators need to be more trusted than usually, probably. And the other thing that's coming to my mind here is, are there any additional incentives for them to, to operate a liquid staking node instead of just an LF0 node?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I wouldn't say that it's, I should emphasize that it's not a requirement that we have trust with these validators. It could be an anon, theoretically. If they were to be a bad validator, we could essentially be losing staking rewards. Like if they were 10% of the delegation of Kinsu, we could just be making nothing from that 10% delegation. That would be impacting everything that like kind of Kinsu touches. So we would want to change that, and that could take up to like an era, 24 hours about. So we want to have like strong names that like enrich the Kinsu ecosystem, that are kind of like great validators, and we expect to be great validators, but it's not a requirement to have trust in them at the end of the day. The second question that you asked, what was the second question you asked there?
About incentives for them.
I think it's a good question. So this one's rather simple. So there's going to be some interesting like incentives in the Kinsu ecosystem, and the incentive that like exists before any sort of governance comes into play for validators is that validators, they post up their 25K A0 to run your own validator, or like 2,000 to start a nomination pool. You can have multiple nomination pools. Most of the time, people create a nomination pool for their own validator to kind of facilitate anyone being able to stake to their validator. Kinsu is creating an extra nomination pool pointing to their validator that Kinsu and the vault and like our DAO will organize. So it's an incremental revenue stream for each validator, they will be getting delegation in this new way from a liquid staking protocol that kind of delegates a percentage to them of its total staking pool. So it's a great way for validators to scale up their total stake and diversify kind of like how it's coming to them.
Right. And ecosystem wise, what does Kinsu or any liquid staking protocol bring to a blockchain ecosystem? And we can, of course, focus on LF0. So what, for the broader ecosystem, what Kinsu will do for LF0?
I like this question a lot. So the key thing here, and I'll just use some example numbers and I'll make the math a little rounded out, but right now, LF0 staking rewards are around 11%, but I'll call it 10%. It's a nice round number. I like round numbers. The rounding down too. So the thing here is that at the core, liquid staking allows you to stake and use your tokens. When you normally stake, you lose the ability to then participate in other interesting, exciting, promising protocols on LF0. So if you look at AVAX, for example, or Common, teams that we think are just top-notch lending and exchanges, or Panorama and all these other like really interesting, exciting teams building, you would have to, if you want to go and exchange, like provide liquidity, trade, or lend and borrow your tokens, with normal staking, you just can't. You'd have to unstake your tokens, give up this 10%, no longer be making that, and then go to Common, AVAX, Panorama, whoever it might be, Angel Block or Pangea, or any of these like awesome teams that are building A0 ID and so on. You'd have to unstake your tokens. So then you're kind of just like looking to make up this 10 or 11% somewhere else. There's a big opportunity cost to unstaking. But what if you could kind of stake and use your tokens? If you can stake and use your tokens, you earn that 10%. And even when you put your SA0, the Kinsu SA0 token, you then go and put it into Common or AVAX or others. And even as you provide liquidity for trading or borrowing on these platforms, these protocols, your tokens are still exposed to that staking reward from consensus rewards. And this kind of means that it's better collateral. Really, like we mentioned before, it's DeFi middleware. The Kinsu has the name. It comes from this like Japanese art. It's called kintsugi. And it's like basically if you picture someone clumsy like me, elbows like a fancy matcha bowl off the counter and it shatters into 100 pieces. There's this beautiful ancient Japanese art of kintsugi where they mend together the broken pieces using gold to put it back together. And you can see that it was like kind of like fractured before, but it's even more beautiful as it comes back together. And we are that gold lining. We're kind of the DeFi middleware, like helping unify the network and integrating staking rewards into other smart contracts. So alone, Kinsu's SA0 is kind of just a unique staking protocol where you just get SA0 instead of nothing when you stake, right? You have a representation of your staking position. But as there is this blossoming ecosystem on LF0, we help empower the other protocols so they don't have to kind of like fight the like free rate of return of the network.
Is there a risk of everyone running towards Kinsu validators and then not staking with the broader network, and does it bring, or can it bring any risk to the ecosystem by concentrating the stake?
I think that's like the exact question that we were seeking to answer as we were drawing our architecture up. And it's maybe one of the things that like scares me the most about some of the ways liquid staking protocols have been made in the past. And I think it's something that we solved. There's always this question of you want to have a lot of different validators for a network. And if one validator has too big a share, kind of breaks some of the security assumptions of Byzantine fault tolerance. And there goes your security and decentralization. So we needed to preserve that in every way. As we were building this, we architected something that's different. And it's sort of elegantly simple. We're just making you can think of it like a weighted list of different validators where we can add remove, and change the weights. And this is directly governed by our governance token. And what that means is, yes, we do start with a small amount of validators that can be governed, changed, and like the weights can change, people can be added or removed. We start with something manageable because we need to, grow and scale from a good place, but it's unlimitedly, or not unlimitedly, but like extremely scalable. And this allows us to, over time, bring in more and more validators. There's always the opportunity to stake directly, but I think there is an incentive. People will want to have the liquid staking token so they can stake and use. And then at the core, if this is built the right way, like it is, where you can truly govern what validators consume powers and highlights, then you maintain and enhance the decentralization of the network as opposed to consolidating power in the hands of few.
Okay, and you mentioned the governance token. Is it the same as SA0, or are you planning to issue another one?
Yeah, more on that later, but basically there would be a governance token adjacent to the protocol that governs all of these like core functionalities. SA0's utility being exactly that it's the liquid staking token.
Okay, and where does the value for SA0 come from? It's 1-to-1 A0, right?
Yeah, so that's the right way to think about it on day one or day zero, whatever you want to call it. Like right when we start, you are like literally the first person before any rewards have been kind of like harvested back into it. You can picture this like simple circle, right? When you put in tokens, you get a piece of the vault back, like a share of the vault. Those rewards get, kind of like following the circle now. Those rewards then go to a series of validators, right? So, let's say that there's 4 validators and they each get quarter of it, 25%. If you put in 1,000 tokens, that means effectively 250 tokens are being delegated to 4 different validators. Let's say that, just for again like the easy math thing here, like if there's 1,000 tokens and a full year passes, which is not like really like that's not actually what's going to happen, but if one full year passes and nothing else happened in the meantime, like there would be like this 10 or 11% reward, and we're kind of skipping past compounding, which is like a perk to this. But you basically have that 1,000 tokens, and let's just call it 10% APR. So then you have another 100 tokens that have been claimed. At that point, the redemption ratio, when those tokens are claimed and go back into the vault, kind of completing the circle, now there's only been 1,000 tokens put in. When you originally started, you got back the same amount with the redemption ratio. So you get 1,000 SA0 back. The vault collects these rewards, and as it collects the rewards, the redemption ratio increases and ratchets up. So when you come back after a year, your 1,000 SA0 would actually have a 1.1 redemption ratio, meaning that you'd get 1,100 A0 back after you cool down. So you can have your staking rewards and exposure to it, and this kind of loop stays like running on one side, but then you bring your token into your SA0 into other protocols, and it still holds the ownership share of the overall staking pool and the returns it generates while it goes and plays in other protocols.
Right, and based on that, I assume you would have to have venues that allow you to use the SA0 instead of A0, right? And probably that's where all the partnerships with different projects come, right?
Yeah, kind of nailed it. So like the whole thing is liquid staking, you can stake and use, right? And what's the value of it if there's no use cases? So there's staking on the DEX by providing liquidity, like maybe you pair SA0 with A0 or with any of the interesting governance tokens that emerge. There's a ton of use cases all in that category of DEX liquidity, like swapping. There's lending, which is kind of a traditional one because like at the end of the day, liquid staking tokens compared to their gas alternatives are better collateral because they earn staking rewards as opposed to having to unstake to participate. So that's a really core DeFi use case as well. And then you start to get these exciting like different derivatives. There's a lot of opportunities in like NFTs and things like that, because again, it's just better collateral. So you start to see gaming, like Launchpad and NFT marketplaces using it, because rather than having any A0 sitting there, you can have it growing with the network. One of the most exciting ones that we can mention too, this is kind of on the DAO level. So when you're a DAO, you'll often see when you're part of the community that you can farm. So with farms, you're really like given this opportunity to pool your tokens on a DEX and stake it to get extra governance tokens. Like pooling tokens on a DEX is famously like you're kind of taking this opportunity cost, this like bet that you're going to earn more from the trading fees than just if you held the two tokens alone, famously known as impermanent loss. So you have this like new risk that you're taking for extra reward. The DAO itself, when it actually goes and creates this liquidity and then an incentivization on top of it with farms, they're kind of doing something smart to help grow the bandwidth of their protocol. And what you can do to advance this, the industry, like Web3 as a whole, is starting to call this LSTFi. And I think it's the right way to move forward with Web3. Instead of pairing with gas tokens, you pair with LSTs. So if you picture, your governance token, we'll call it GovX or something, and you have gas. So when you have gas and GovX, you would have one option. But like if you did LST and GovX as your pair, it's kind of like, if the staking reward is 10%, one of the tokens gets that. So half of the tokens in the pool are getting it, which means that like you have a 5% better option. So the like risk of like kind of going into that is offset by incorporating staking rewards in, which kind of creates a better opportunity for DAOs. And ultimately, if there's less risk, it's going to mean more liquidity, less expensive to attract as well.
Okay, and you mentioned that one of the simplest use cases to liquid staking is lending protocols, right? And can you guide us maybe through, because as this is basic, maybe it's, simple to explain, how can one, maximize what they have probably with, liquid staking and using it as collateral. So, what's the strategy here?
I'm just going to give another big shout out to our friends at ABAX. They've really been like great development partners and builders in the space. And it's, again, awesome to be working with such an incredible ecosystem. So if you take ABAX as an example here, and let's say that let's just talk mainly about two different options, right? You could lend A0 or you could lend SA0. At the end of the day, SA0 is just kind of like super A0, right? It's like it's earning the staking rewards. So on one hand, you can have your A0 that has some price. And then let's say you put in, $100 of A0. That will allow you to borrow against what you've kind of like put up as collateral. So let's say you're kind of this is not financial advice, but like, if you put up like, $100 and you only want to borrow like 50% against your collateral, you could borrow $50 worth of something else from AVAX. So maybe you borrow something like a stable coin and you get back $50 worth of your stable coin. You could then go and buy more A0 to create some leverage for yourself. Or you could go and farm with that $50 by buying the two tokens, pooling them, and then entering the farm. So like you might pay off your actual interest that you're kind of like accruing using those farm rewards, for example. Alternatively, so that $100 is going to always be worth let's say you put in, if A0, it's worth $1.50 right now, so that'd be like 66 A0 you get into the pool to put up $100. You would have your 66 to redeem as long as you don't get liquidated. On the other hand, if you put up that same $100 worth of SA0, after a year, that SA0 will actually be worth, for every one SA0, it'd be worth 1.1 A0 approximately. And because of that, it's just better collateral. That's kind of the key thing that you come back to with liquid staking, is that it's better collateral. So this means that over that period of time, you're kind of defending yourself from liquidations. You're accruing more A0 even while you're then earning extra fees from AVAX or a lending protocol when people borrow, you earn interest basically. So you're now kind of making compounding returns. You have multiple levels of returns. You have the staking rewards, which are just kind of integrated through Kinsu, like DeFi middleware. And then you also earn your interest from ABAX, or if you're on comp, you also earn your swap fees, or you also earn your swap fees and your interest and your farm rewards, or whatever kind of like more and more interesting products you start to explore.
And if I get liquidated, as far as I understand it, is that like basically the tokens are not burned, so it's more like the protocol can exchange that as A0 for A0, right? This is the mechanism.
Yeah, with ABAX, or I don't want to speak specifically about them. In the general concept of lending, not even limited to Web3, you might get liquidated if you are borrowing money. You can lend and take on no borrowing, like personally with your own account. And you don't really have any risk of getting liquidated. You would just be lending out your tokens and earning an interest. But like you can get liquidated. You should always be careful. If you're borrowing, you kind of like take on extra risk, and you might want to do something with the funds you borrow. But at the end of the day, like the liquid staking part of it is that if you put up liquids like LSTs, and this isn't even specific to just Kinsu, like if you put up LSTs instead of gas, you are using better collateral. You are taking on smart contract risk by using LSTs, but you're exposed to the consensus rewards like that, 10, 11% from staking, but you get to stake and use. So after that, like long period of time passes, if you're taking like a long-term strategy, these tokens kind of just grow with the network as opposed to their share kind of shrinking with like the kind of like network inflation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, definitely. So we can also move on to, I think, the broader ecosystem of Kinsu, as I would call it. So what partnerships did you make already? Because, from time to time, I keep seeing those on Twitter. So where I will be able to use Kinsu and SA0.
I think that we're working with almost all of the EFP teams. Some of the conversations are earlier than others, but we're seeing such like a well-built ecosystem with great teams that our goal is really to work with everyone. We've been working really closely already with the common ABAX, A0 ID, Syncra, and so many others. We're really excited to be in conversations with the Angel Block guys. I love the Marmoset crew and the Art Zero teams as well. So like we're kind of very close with all of the big names helping drive forward the LF Zero community.
And maybe going back a little bit, I remember we once spoke about liquidity mining strategies for different projects. So what can those projects employ in, with LST to just, benefit from integrating Kinsu?
Oh yeah, I remember that conversation. Thanks for kind of like flagging this one. So I think we at the core we started like scratching the surface of this one, and we're always happy to like help other DAOs and community members and teams with this kind of stuff. Just like born from having such an incredible experience with Pangolin and advising 50, 60 plus different DAOs on their liquidity mining strategy. LSTs play a very straightforward role in making your liquidity mining strategy incrementally better. It's staking and using. You always are pairing a governance token with gas. And when you pair a governance token, or most people pair their governance tokens with gas. And if you do that, it's a little better to pair it with an LST. It's a lot better. Because in addition to that 5 to 5.5% that you're kind of better by having staking rewards in your pair, you also gain Kinsu as a partner. And this means that like we can help you grow your liquidity as a whole. And I think you just will benefit from the like power of the Kinsu community. There's a bunch of math charts and stuff like that we can like post. And we're actually doing a whole bunch of content around now. We're building out a content series for this. But we're always open to help collaborate on this kind of thing with other exciting projects.
Yeah, that's definitely, the benefit of the broader ecosystem, right? As you said. So I think we are close to getting you on the mainnet. So how will that happen? What's the roadmap so far?
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to be going live in like smack in the middle of Q1. We're getting pretty close. So we're Brandon, John, Dylan, they're just completely smashing it. We're working with some really great people from the foundation, and it's been such an incredible ride. We've been using a lot of like testing, the like new framework for pseudo end-to-end testing, and we're starting to see all of our tests passing. Auditing, you have to do it really rigorously internally too before you seek external auditing. We have a growing partnership with the Kudelski team who will be doing our smart contract audits, and we seek to be kind of like wrapping up the audit process in January, let's say, allowing us to go live with a testnet and mainnet soon thereafter. So we're getting really close, and I think we're going to see this exciting grand crescendo of all of these first wave EFP projects launching on mainnet to really invigorate the Aleph Zero ecosystem in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, Q1 is going to be exciting. And of course, everything beyond that, but Q1 is the launch season for us, for the first projects, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be such a cool time because like in addition to all of the like sort of DeFi basics being there really early, lending DEX, liquid staking, that's kind of a trifecta right there in itself. The privacy part is like, undermentioned. Like we can do all of these things with like a privacy enhancing space. At the end of the day, that's something that hasn't really been seen in like full production grade. And we're talking about a chain that has single second finality, privacy, a focus on compliance, which so many people kind of just skip past and that'll create issues later. The like IDOS and Fractal team, who I like, we lean on so heavily, and is also such a critical partnership of ours. Like, it's really amazing to have that as well.
Yeah, we think so as well. So yeah, I think that's all I had for you today, unless you would like to share some of your wisdom with our audience.
Oh man, I think it might be tough. I don't know about wisdom, but like, yeah, like Matt, thank you so much for having us on. It's really been a pleasure building with yourself and the whole Aleph Zero community as a whole. Just thank you so much for having us on today.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, how big is Kinsu team?
There's a lot of different people, but I would say that we are about 5 or 6 so far and growing. It's starting to be a growing thing, and it's just really special to watch as more and more people get involved.
All right. So yeah, thank you for joining us. I think that's it for today. And yeah, really looking forward to having Kinsu on the mainnet and being able to use it. So yeah, thanks. And to everyone that's listening, of course, please leave reviews, subscribe, and come back to our show. Thank you.